The first time I saw the wire transfer, I thought it was a banking error, some random glitch on my MacBook screen after another long night working on a client's penthouse design in Manhattan. But the number didn't disappear when I blinked. $4.8 million, sent from our joint account to a shell company I'd never heard of. My pulse stuttered. Preston always said we were saving for our future, so why had nearly everything vanished overnight? I clicked deeper into the statement, my fingers trembling. And there it was, an address I knew too well. A villa in Watermill South. My dream villa. The one I'd shown him on Zillow 2 years ago. The one with the wraparound deck and glass walls overlooking the Atlantic. I remembered telling him, half laughing, if I ever live here, it means life finally loves me. He had kissed my forehead and said, someday, Maddie. But now, someday had happened, and I wasn't part of it. Confused, nauseous, and desperate for clarity, I drove to the Hamptons the next morning. The guard at the private gate gave me a puzzled look before asking, "Are you here for Mr. Hale's fiancé? They just left yesterday." Fiancé. My husband had a fiancé. The world tunneled. I barely remember how I got back to Manhattan, only that I ended up in Rowan Pierce's office, the CEO whose firm built the villa. I asked for proof, any proof, that this wasn't what it looked like. Rowan hesitated, then opened the live access security archive. The footage loaded, and there they were, Preston, kneeling on the perfect green lawn of my dream villa.
Chloe Maddox, crying fake tears as he slid a Cartier ring on her finger.
My breath broke. My knees nearly buckled. Rowan caught my arm before I hit the floor. "Madeline, I'm sorry," he whispered. But the worst part wasn't the proposal. It was realizing Preston had stolen my dreams to give them to someone else. I used to believe marriages didn't break in one night. They cracked slowly, quietly, like hairline fractures in crystal glass. You don't see the damage until it finally shatters in your hands. And with Preston, the cracks had been there long before the villa, long before Chloe's perfectly staged tears on that coastal lawn. I just didn't want to admit it. Back in our Manhattan apartment overlooking the Hudson, the silence felt heavier than the skyline itself. Preston had been sleeping in the guest room for months, claiming late-night deadlines, team pressure, client dinners. I would climb into bed alone, pretending the cold sheets didn't mean anything. Pretending that marriage went through seasons. Pretending we were just in winter. He used to text me during the day, small things, silly things. Saw a cafe you'd love. Designed a lobby today that reminded me of your style. Dinner at 7? But lately, his messages were clipped. Busy. Later. Don't wait up. Even the way he carried himself changed. He bought a new Mercedes S-Class without telling me. Started wearing tailored suits from a designer he once mocked as overpriced nonsense. He traded his old leather watch for a sleek black Cartier model. Everything about him sharpened, polished, curated, like he was preparing for a new audience.
And I was no longer part of the presentation.
One night, weeks before I discovered the villa, I'd woken at 2 a.m. to the sound of him whispering in the hallway. When he saw me, he ended the call so fast the screen didn't even fade. "Who was that?" I asked. "A client," he said without blinking. "Go back to bed, Maddie." But his eyes, they held that distant glaze of someone already living a life far from mine. I tried to reach him, but every attempt turned into an argument. "You're too emotional. You're imagining things. You're stressed. Take a break from work." And like a fool, I believed him. I blamed myself. I thought if I worked harder, loved softer, apologized faster, he'd return to the man I married. But now, having watched that camera footage, I finally understood. Preston hadn't drifted away. He had been replacing me, piece by piece, long before I even knew I was gone.
The day after the footage broke me open, I found myself standing in the marble lobby of Pierce Development, still wearing the same wrinkled blouse from yesterday, my eyes swollen, my hair pulled into a rushed knot. I hadn't planned to come. My feet just brought me here. Maybe because some part of me knew Rowan Pierce was the only person who wouldn't lie to me. Rowan had always been a quiet force. Years ago, when we worked together on a Manhattan boutique hotel, he impressed me with his calm precision. How he carried a Mont Blanc pen like it was part of his hand. How he rarely raised his voice. How he seemed to listen not just to words, but to the spaces between them. He noticed things people tried to hide. Today, he noticed everything about me. "Maddie," he said gently as he approached, his steps slowing the moment he saw my face.
"Come upstairs."
His office overlooked Park Avenue. Glass windows, clean lines, soft gray light. Sophisticated but warm in a way that made my chest loosen. He didn't push, didn't ask questions. He simply waited. When I finally spoke, my voice cracked like thin ice. "Rowan, he bought the villa, the one I always wanted, and he proposed to her there." Rowan inhaled slowly, jaw tightening for just a moment, an emotion passing too quickly to name. Then he pulled up the camera interface again, not to torture me, but to confirm timestamps, details, access logs. He was thinking like a CEO now, not a friend. "I need you to see something," he murmured. Another clip loaded, this time showing Preston touring the villa 2 months earlier with Chloe. She pressed herself against him like they were already married. And Preston, he looked happy. The kind of happy he hadn't been with me in years.
My throat closed. He was already planning it back then.
Rowan nodded. "Yes, and he's been moving assets for months." "Maddie, this wasn't sudden. It was strategic." Strategic. The word stabbed harder than betrayal. Rowan's voice softened, losing its business edge. "Listen to me. Preston has built an entire life behind your back. But he made mistakes, financial ones, and you're not as powerless as you think." When I finally looked up at him, his eyes held something steady, unwavering. Not pity, belief. And for the first time since the villa, I felt the tiniest spark of strength flicker back to life. The morning after Rowan revealed the second clip, I drove back to the Hamptons, not because I wanted answers, but because I needed to stand on the ground where my life had split in two. The coastal air was crisp, sharp enough to sting my lungs as I pulled up to the gated community.
The guard recognized me this time, his expression softening like he already knew what I had learned. "Mrs. Hale, I wasn't sure if you'd return," he said gently. For a moment, hearing that name felt like a slap, but I forced a nod. "I just need to see the property." He hesitated, then pressed the button, letting the iron gates slide open with a low groan. My car rolled forward slowly, tires crunching over the gravel path as the villa came into view. Sunlight spilling across its white walls, the glass panels reflecting the ocean like nothing bad could ever happen here. But I knew better. Beauty doesn't erase betrayal. When I stepped out, the salt air wrapped around me. The house looked exactly like the pictures I once saved on my Pinterest board. Every angle, every window, every dream I had whispered into Preston's ear. Except now, Chloe had stepped into the frame I created. As I approached the front door, a housekeeper stepped outside carrying fresh linens. She paused when she saw me. "Oh, are you Miss Maddox's sister?" she asked brightly. My stomach twisted. "No," I said quietly. "I'm Preston Hale's wife." Her face drained of color. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. They told us you were—" She stopped herself, panic flickering in her eyes. "Told you what?" I pressed. "That you were out of the picture." Out of the picture. Removed. Edited out of my own life like an unwanted detail. I steadied myself against the white railing. "Did you see them here often?" She swallowed. "Yes, almost every weekend. They acted like the house was already theirs." Already theirs. While I was home in Manhattan, cooking dinner alone, waiting for a man who was planning a future with someone else. The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of sea spray, and something inside me shifted. This villa was no longer my dream. It was evidence, and I intended to use every inch of it. The night Rowan showed me the first clip, I thought I'd already hit the bottom. I thought nothing could cut deeper than watching my husband kneel in the place I once called my dream. But the truth had layers, sharp, waiting, unforgiving. And Rowan knew it. "Madeline," he said softly, "there's more footage you haven't seen." I could barely breathe. "How much more?" He exhaled, turning the monitor slightly toward me. "Enough to prove this wasn't impulsive. He's been building a life with her for months." A tremor ran through my hands as the next video loaded. The timestamp was from 6 weeks earlier, on a night Preston told me he was in Boston for a leadership retreat. There he was, standing in the villa's living room, wearing the same navy suit he wore to our anniversary dinner the week before. Chloe was beside him, barefoot on the hardwood floor, holding a glass of white wine while laughing at something he said. My stomach twisted. She moved through the house like she'd lived there forever, touching countertops, opening cabinets, examining fixtures I had once dreamed of choosing myself. But what broke me wasn't her laughter. It was Preston's smile. Soft, unburdened, a version of him I hadn't seen in years. A version of him he no longer gave to me. I watched him wrap an arm around her waist, guiding her toward the balcony. "We'll redo this railing," he said in the clip. "Maddie likes coastal minimalism, but you—" He paused, tracing Chloe's jaw with his thumb. "You deserve something bolder." My breath caught. He was designing my dream house around her. Another clip rolled automatically. This time, Chloe held a folder, my folder, the mood board I created years ago. "How did you get this?" she asked. Preston laughed. "Stole it from her office." My knees nearly gave out. Rowan steadied me again, his touch firm but gentle. "There's one more clip," he whispered. "This one you need for legal protection." The final footage showed Preston signing documents with the shell company. My name crossed out in red ink on the first draft. He hadn't forgotten me. He had erased me. And something inside me, something quiet and trusting, finally snapped. I didn't cry when Rowan showed me the final clip. I didn't scream or fall apart the way people expect a betrayed wife to break. Instead, something inside me simply disconnected, as if my mind stepped out of my body to observe the wreckage from a safe distance. When I finally left his office, Manhattan felt wrong. Too loud, too bright. Every taxi horn slicing through my thoughts like a blade. I walked aimlessly down Park Avenue, past marble lobbies and doormen in tailored uniforms, past women with perfect blowouts carrying their Dior shopping bags like trophies. I used to imagine myself among them someday. Now I felt like a ghost drifting through someone else's city. By the time I reached Central Park, the sun had slipped low, casting long gold shadows over the lake. I sank onto a bench, my breath shaking as if the air itself weighed too much. How long had Preston been planning my exit? How many dinners did he share with me while dreaming about her? How many nights did he let me blame myself for his distance? A group of teenagers passed by, laughing loudly, carefree. One of them glanced at me, my swollen eyes, the way my arms wrapped tightly around my chest, and looked away quickly, unsure whether to ask if I was okay. I wasn't, and I didn't know how to fix it. Memories hit me like waves crashing too fast. The night I lost the baby. Preston telling me, "Don't make this dramatic." My birthday when he forgot the cake but blamed the bakery. The evenings he came home smelling faintly of perfume I didn't own. I had excused every red flag. I had stitched the cracks until my hands bled. And he rewarded my loyalty by replacing me in the very dream I built with him. The tears finally came, not loud, not wild, but silent, steady, the kind that burn on their way down. I pressed my palms against my face, wishing I could disappear into the cool evening air. Then,
Unexpectedly, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Madeline, this is Rowan. You don't have to go through this alone. I'm nearby if you need someone." For the first time that day, the world didn't feel entirely hostile. Just wounded. Like me. I didn't answer Rowan's message right away. I couldn't. My hands were still trembling when I finally stood up from the park bench and made my way back to our apartment, the place that once felt safe, warm, ours. Now every brick in the building felt like a lie I had willingly lived inside. When I opened the door, Preston was already home. He stood in the kitchen wearing one of his tailored shirts, sipping scotch like it was any ordinary night. He glanced at me, eyebrows lifting with mild annoyance, not concern. "You look awful," he said. "Where have you been?" For the first time, I didn't shrink. "I saw the villa," I said, "and the footage." His glass paused mid-air, just for a second, just long enough to reveal the guilt he thought he hid so well. "What footage?" he asked flatly. "Don't insult me," I whispered. "I saw you propose to her, Preston." The room went still. The refrigerator hummed loudly in the background. Outside, traffic echoed from the street, but between us, pure silence. Then he spoke, voice cold and rehearsed. "You were going to find out eventually. I just didn't think it needed to be dramatic." I stared at him, stunned. "You used our savings. You bought the house I always dreamed of and gave it to her." He scoffed. "You're overreacting, Maddie. You always do. That villa was an investment. And Chloe is your fiancée." He didn't deny it. He simply exhaled, as if I was the inconvenience. "You and I haven't been working for a long time," he continued. "You've been fragile, emotional, and I need someone who supports me, not drags me down." My chest tightened. "I lost our baby, Preston. I was grieving." He set the glass down with a sharp click. "And I was tired of living with a shadow. Chloe makes me feel alive." There it was, the truth. Rotten and cruel, and finally exposed. "So you erase me? Erase our marriage? Erase everything we built?" He shrugged. "You'll move on. You're strong." For the first time, his words didn't manipulate me. They freed me. I straightened, meeting his eyes with a steadiness he didn't expect. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." And for the first time, he looked afraid. I didn't sleep the night after confronting Preston. My body was exhausted, but my mind was a wildfire. Every breath felt like another reminder that my marriage had already died long before I realized I was grieving it. By morning, something in me hardened. I needed air, clarity, distance from the man who stole my dreams and handed them to someone else. So I drove back to the villa, not to suffer, but to reclaim whatever pieces of myself were left there. But this time, when I arrived, a sleek white BMW was already parked in the driveway. Chloe. She stepped out wearing a silk dress, sunglasses perched on her head like she was auditioning for a Hamptons lifestyle magazine. When she saw me, her lips curved into a soft, pitying smile, the kind women use when they want to win while pretending they're being gracious. "Oh, Maddie," she said, voice dripping with sweetness. "You're early. Preston said you two were separating amicably." Separating amicably. The words almost made me laugh. "I'm still his wife," I replied, "legally." Her smile faltered for a heartbeat before returning, brighter, sharper. "Of course. Technicalities can be so messy." She walked closer, lowering her voice. "I'm really sorry you saw the proposal. It wasn't meant to hurt you." It wasn't meant to hurt me. They filmed it on a terrace I once pinned on my vision board. Chloe placed a manicured hand on my arm, light, patronizing. "You know, Preston told me how hard things have been for you. The depression after the miscarriage, the way you pulled away emotionally. My blood ran cold. He told her that? I pulled my arm back. My grief is not an excuse for his betrayal. Chloe tilted her head, expression softening into faux sympathy. Sometimes men need more than we can give. I shouldn't have to apologize for loving him. There it was, the venom behind the sugar. But then, her final mistake. She gestured to the villa and whispered, "Anyway, this place is mine now."
Preston said you never really fit this lifestyle. My breath froze in my lungs. Not from pain, from fury so sharp it felt almost clean. Because in that moment I realized something important. Chloe wasn't just the woman he chose. She was the pawn he didn't realize he'd placed directly in my path. And pawns, when used correctly, can bring down kings. When I drove back to Manhattan after the encounter with Chloe, anger pulsed through me like electricity. Sharp, steady, impossible to ignore. But beneath the fury was something colder, heavier. The realization that I had absolutely no idea how deep Preston's deception went, or how much damage he'd already done behind my back. I needed help, real help, not emotional support, strategy. So when Rowan texted again that evening, "Can we talk? I found something you need to see." I didn't hesitate. I went. His office was dimly lit when I stepped inside, the city glowing behind him like a wall of fire. Rowan was leaning over his MacBook Pro, jaw tense, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked up the moment I entered, and the concern in his eyes nearly undid me. "Maddie, sit," he said gently. "What I'm about to show you isn't easy." He turned the laptop toward me. Bank statements, shell companies, transfers from accounts I didn't even know Preston controlled. My stomach knotted. "How long has he been doing this?" "At least 9 months," Rowan said quietly. He used offshore entities to hide purchases, art pieces, jewelry, travel, and the villa was the largest asset. My chest tightened until breathing hurt. Preston hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. He'd financially gutted our marriage with surgical precision. "But here's the part that matters," Rowan continued. "He made mistakes, enough to give you leverage in court." He pulled up one more document, one that made my pulse spike. A draft of the villa ownership transfer. Preston tried to remove my name, but legally, the asset was still marital property. I swallowed hard. "Why are you helping me this much?" Rowan leaned back, expression steady. "Because I've been where you are. My ex-wife drained my accounts, blindsided me with divorce papers, and left me rebuilding from ashes." He paused. "And because you don't deserve to be destroyed by a man like Preston." A lump formed in my throat. No one had stood up for me like this in years. Rowan slid a folder across the desk. "This is a roadmap. Lawyers, forensic accountants, steps you can take immediately. Maddie, you don't have to just survive this. You can win." For the first time, the fire in my chest didn't burn from pain, but from possibility. I thought I was prepared for whatever came next. After all, I'd seen Preston propose to another woman in the villa of my dreams. I'd confronted him. I'd survived Chloe's smug, saccharine cruelty. But Rowan wasn't exaggerating. There were deeper layers, darker truths, buried beneath months of deceit. And now I was about to uncover every one of them. We spent 2 hours in his office, the city glowing behind us as evidence built like storm clouds. Rowan clicked through file after file stored in the forensic folder he'd assembled. Bank transfers, email trails, travel receipts. Each new piece felt like another brick dropped onto my chest. "Preston didn't just cheat," Rowan said quietly. "He structured his life to replace you entirely." He pulled up a corporate email thread labeled Strategic Personal Planning. Seeing Preston's name next to Chloe's in a professional context made my blood run cold. I leaned forward.
Play it. Rowan opened the attachments. They were plans for events Chloe would attend as his future spouse. Drafts of bios listing her as partner to Preston Hale. Even a mock-up of a holiday card featuring the villa, My Dream Home, as their backdrop. But the worst part? A spreadsheet listing projected expenses for Household 2. Rowan tapped the screen. This means he financially prepared to support Chloe while phasing you out. He redirected funds little by little so you'd look unstable if you filed for divorce. I felt every muscle in my body tense. He wanted to make me look crazy. Yes, Rowan said softly. And broke. My vision blurred for a moment.
Not from tears, from rage. He clicked another tab, revealing the offshore account Preston used. I recognized one expense instantly, a necklace from Tiffany, one I thought he purchased for our anniversary, but never gave me.
He gave it to her, I whispered.
Rowan didn't look away. He stole your money to build a life with another woman. That's not just immoral, it's prosecutable. Something inside me finally shifted from devastation to resolve. Then we prosecute, I said. Rowan's lips curved, not a smile, but the expression of someone witnessing a woman step back into her power. Good, he said, because this is the part where you stop being the victim. He closed the laptop gently. And start becoming the problem Preston never saw coming. The next shift in this twisted story didn't come from Preston. It came from Chloe, unexpected, unplanned, and dripping with the downfall she never saw coming. 3 days after Rowan and I uncovered the offshore accounts, I was in my apartment packing a small overnight bag. I needed space from the memories, from the ghost of my marriage. I planned to stay in a midtown hotel, somewhere with clean sheets and no reminders of him. Then my phone buzzed, an unknown number. "Madeline, it's Chloe. We need to talk." I froze. Why would she contact me? She had already won, or thought she did. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a quiet cafe in the West Village. I arrived early, sitting by the window, the steam from my untouched coffee fogging the glass. When she finally walked in, she didn't look like the polished woman from the villa. Her makeup was uneven, her eyes red, her hands trembling as she slid into the seat across from me. "Maddie," she whispered, voice stripped of sweetness. "He lied to me." I didn't respond. I wanted her to keep talking. She swallowed hard. "Preston told me you were terminally ill, that you were stepping down from the marriage because you didn't want him to suffer." My heart dropped into my stomach, disgust mixing with a strange, quiet confirmation. Of course he would weaponize my past grief. Of course he would twist reality until it suited him. "He said you signed divorce papers," she continued, voice cracking. "Said you gave him permission to move on." I leaned back, staring at her. "And you believed him?" She winced as if I had slapped her. "He told me he didn't want to hurt you. He said you were unstable, that the miscarriage broke you." Anger burned through my veins, not because of Chloe, but because Preston had used my deepest wound as his alibi. "And now?" I asked quietly. Her hands clenched around her cup. "Now I know he's been lying to both of us. I found his messages with other women, plural." Of course. Preston didn't upgrade, he rotated. A pattern, not an accident. Chloe's eyes lifted to mine, shattered and ashamed. "I thought I was special." I exhaled slowly. We all did. For the first time, Chloe didn't look like the villain. She looked like the next casualty. A casualty who had just become my unexpected weapon. Chloe didn't become an ally overnight. Women like her don't switch sides out of guilt. They switch sides out of survival. And that was exactly what I saw in her eyes as she stirred her untouched latte, knuckles white around the porcelain cup. "He's been cheating on both of us," she whispered, voice thin. I found backup phones,
Photos, messages. He calls us the same names. I didn't flinch. That's who he is, Chloe.
Not who he became, who he always was. Her jaw trembled.
I thought, if I loved him enough, he'd choose me.
I almost pitied her, almost. But pity doesn't erase consequences. So what do you want from me? I asked. She reached into her designer tote and pulled out a slim black folder, the kind used in corporate offices, not personal affairs. She slid it toward me with trembling fingers.
These are copies of everything I found, she said. Financial logs, messages, screenshots, even photos from his trips with other women. I opened the folder. Preston's lies spilled out like poison. Dates, receipts, hotel check-ins, itineraries. He had been living 10 different lives while I was trying to repair one broken one. Why give this to me? I asked. Chloe swallowed hard, mascara smudging beneath her eyes.
Because he told me yesterday that you were making things difficult, and that once the divorce was finalized, he wouldn't need me anymore. There it was, the real reason.
He said, her voice cracked, he said I was just a transition.
A stepping stone, a placeholder, a convenience. Exactly what he had turned me into, exactly what he would turn the next woman into.
I'm not doing this out of kindness, she admitted, looking away. I'm doing it because I refuse to be humiliated. I refuse to let him walk away clean.
I closed the folder gently. Then understand this. Once I use this, there's no going back. Her expression hardened, not sweet, not soft, but steel wrapped in silk.
I don't want to go back, she said. I want him to pay.
For the first time, we weren't wife and mistress. We were two women burned by the same man and ready to light the match that would burn down his entire facade. Strength doesn't return all at once. It comes back in fragments, quiet, steady, almost invisible, until suddenly you're standing taller than the person who once crushed you. For me, it began the morning I walked into the empty loft in Soho that Rowan had shown me. Exposed brick, tall windows, sunlight pouring across the concrete floor like an invitation. This could be your studio, Rowan had said, his voice calm, certain. A fresh start. At first, the idea seemed impossible. I was still unraveling, still bruised. But as I stood alone in the quiet space, I imagined bolts of fabric stacked against the wall, sketches pinned to boards, clients seated across from me as I guided them through their dream home. For the first time in months, I pictured a future that didn't involve Preston. So I signed the lease, using my own name, my own identity, my own rebirth. The next few days were a blur of momentum, ordering a drafting table, setting up my MacBook Air, unpacking boxes of tools I hadn't touched in years. Each item felt like reclaiming a part of myself he had tried to erase. Rowan visited often, not hovering, not controlling, just present. He'd drop by with coffee or a new architectural book, or sometimes nothing but quiet companionship. "You're glowing," he said once, watching me sketch by the window. I scoffed. "I'm exhausted." "No," he said softly, eyes warm. "You're rebuilding." And he was right. Clients began to call again, word spreading that I had opened my own boutique interior studio. My first project was a penthouse renovation on the Upper East Side. A week later, a hotel chain reached out. Piece by piece, I was constructing something stronger than my old life, something mine. But healing isn't linear. One afternoon, while reorganizing fabric swatches, I found the design binder Preston once mocked. "You'll never get clients with this soft stuff," he'd said. I ran my fingers over the pages. Pastels, linen textures, organic curves. And instead of sadness, I felt pride. He never understood my vision. Rowan did. I did. By the time I locked the studio that night, I realized something vital. This wasn't just recovery. It was evolution. And I was no longer the woman Preston abandoned.
I was the woman he would regret losing for the rest of his life. The first crack in Preston's world came quietly. An email forwarded to me by Rowan with the subject line, "Internal Review Notice." 4 words capable of detonating a man who built his entire identity on appearances. His company launched an ethics audit, Rowan explained when he stopped by the studio, his tone calm but unmistakably satisfied. Anonymous tip, multiple irregularities. They're pulling every financial string he's touched. I didn't ask if he was the anonymous tip, and he didn't confirm it. But the small, knowing lift of his brow told me everything. For once, someone was protecting me with the same intensity Preston had used to destroy me. By noon, Preston's phone calls began. First 1, then 3, then 12. I let them ring. Every unanswered call felt like reclaiming oxygen. Later that evening, while reviewing design boards for a hotel project, my phone finally buzzed with a message, this time from a friend who worked at Preston's company. "Maddie, are you okay? There's an investigation. Preston's freaking out." I stared at the screen, a strange calm washing over me. He was panicking. Good. He had spent months orchestrating my downfall, financially, emotionally, socially. Now the trap he built for me was closing on him instead. The next morning my friend called. They pulled his expense records. Trips he said were business weren't. Charges on cards that shouldn't exist. The offshore account came up. I let out a slow breath. And Chloe? She's been questioned too. HR scheduled a meeting with her. So it was happening. The life he created with stolen money, stolen dreams, stolen promises. It was finally splitting apart. By late afternoon, Preston showed up at my studio unannounced, looking nothing like the polished executive he pretended to be. His tie was crooked, hair disheveled, eyes wild. "Maddie, they're coming after me," he snapped. "You need to tell them those accounts were joint decisions." I stepped aside, blocking the doorway. "I'm not covering for you." His face twisted. "You think you're better than me now? You think that new little studio makes you untouchable?" "No," I said, voice steady. "But your lies do." He lunged forward, desperation pouring off him. "If I go down, you go down too." I held his gaze, unflinching. "You already buried me once, Preston. I'm done digging graves for you." His empire wasn't falling silently anymore. It was collapsing, loud, public, unstoppable. And for the first time, I wasn't the one breaking. 2 days after Preston stormed into my studio, something shifted in the air, like the quiet before a storm no one can outrun. The fallout from the corporate investigation was spreading fast. News travels quickly in Manhattan's business circles, especially when a high-ranking executive is suddenly under a microscope. By noon, my phone buzzed non-stop with messages from acquaintances. Is it true Preston misused company funds? He's been removed from a project. HR pulled him out of a meeting. The man who once walked through skyscraper hallways like he owned the city was now stumbling through them like a ghost chasing relevance. That evening, I returned to my apartment for the last of my belongings. Rowan insisted on coming with me, for safety, he said. But I could tell he simply didn't want me to face the remnants of my old life alone. But when we stepped off the elevator, Preston was already there, sitting on the hallway floor, back against the wall, tie loosened, eyes red. A defeated king without a kingdom. "Maddie," he breathed, scrambling to his feet. "Thank God you're here. We need to talk." Rowan stood slightly behind me, present, steady, unmovable. Preston's gaze flicked to him. "So this is why you're doing this? Because of him?" I lifted my chin. "No, I'm doing this because of you." He stepped closer, desperation oozing through every word. "They took my access. My accounts are frozen. HR wants statements. You have to tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them the offshore accounts were your idea too." I stared at him, stunned by the delusion. My idea? Preston, you used our money to build an entirely new life. His composure cracked. Fine. I messed up, okay? But you were distant. You weren't the same after the miscarriage. I needed comfort, stability. Chloe gave me that. The words sliced through me, cold and cruel, blaming my grief for his infidelity. Rowan stepped forward then, voice calm but razor sharp. You don't get to weaponize her pain. Preston's face twisted. Stay out of this. She's my wife. Not for long, I said quietly. For a moment he looked truly terrified, not of losing me, but of losing the shield my silence once provided. Maddie, please. His voice cracked. I need you. I met his eyes with a clarity that surprised even me. You needed me before you betrayed me. Now, you just need someone to save you. I turned away, and this time, I didn't look back. If Preston's downfall had begun with quiet cracks, Chloe was the explosion that finally blew his perfect image to ash. 2 days after he cornered me in the hallway, the entire city woke to a storm, and this time I wasn't the one drowning in it. My phone buzzed endlessly as notifications flooded in. Twitter threads, Instagram stories, anonymous gossip accounts. Rowan called before I could even open a single link. Don't panic, he said, but Chloe talked. I froze. Talked about what? Everything. I clicked the first notification. There it was. Chloe's face on a video, puffy-eyed, mascara-streaked, sitting in what looked like the guest room of the villa. Her voice trembled, but not from innocence, from humiliation. I thought I was his forever, she said on camera. But Preston Hale lied to me. He lied to all of us. She held up documents, screenshots Rowan and I knew well. Text messages, fake divorce drafts, photos of Preston with other women. Women neither of us had seen before. He told me his wife was dying, Chloe whispered. He said she wanted him to be happy. I believed him, and I was wrong. My breath caught. Even with all the damage she'd caused me, hearing her say the words hit harder than I expected. But Chloe wasn't done. The next slide showed the villa purchase agreement, the offshore transfers, the expenses. She exposed everything, not for justice, not for me, but because she refused to be the final fool in Preston's rotation. Rowan called again. This video has 3 million views in an hour, he said. His company can't ignore this now. By noon, Preston's employer released a statement. Effective immediately, Preston Hale is suspended pending full investigation. Suspended. Publicly. Irreversibly. That evening I met Rowan in my studio. The glow from the street lamps cast soft light across the drafting tables. You okay? He asked. I exhaled. I didn't expect it to go nuclear. Rowan's lips lifted slightly. Humiliated people rarely stay quiet. I looked out the window at the city, alive, pulsing, indifferent, and felt something shift inside me. For months I had been the victim of Preston's lies. But now the world finally saw him. Not as the polished, charismatic executive, but as the coward who built his throne on stolen dreams. His reckoning had begun, and it wasn't going to stop here. The morning of the hearing arrived colder than I expected for late spring, the kind of cold that slips beneath your coat and settles against your bones. I stood outside the Manhattan Civil Courthouse, clutching a folder of evidence, camera stills, bank statements, Chloe's recorded confession. The folder felt heavier than it should, maybe because it held not just proof, but the ashes of a decade I once believed in. Rowan arrived right on time, his charcoal suit crisp, his presence grounding. You ready? He asked softly. No, but I nodded anyway. Inside, the air hummed with low conversations and the shuffle of paperwork. Preston sat at the opposite table, trying to maintain his polished executive posture, but cracks showed everywhere. His shaking leg, his clenched jaw, the way his eyes darted whenever someone whispered nearby. He wasn't afraid of the law. He was afraid of exposure. His attorney, a sleek man in a navy suit, leaned toward him. "We can still settle quietly, Preston. Public hearings won't help you." I almost laughed. That option vanished the moment he turned my life into collateral damage. My lawyer, a sharp woman with a calm voice and steel backbone, placed a hand on my arm. "Once we present the forensic trail, the judge will take this very seriously."
Stay steady. Then the doors opened, and everything began.
Preston's lawyer tried to frame him as a stressed executive making misguided financial decisions, but the judge's expression hardened immediately when my attorney placed the first exhibit on the screen. A screenshot from the villa's security camera. Preston kneeling before Chloe with a Cartier ring, a ring funded by our marital assets. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Next came the offshore transfers, the shell company, the discrepancies in his tax records, the falsified drafts he showed Chloe where I supposedly signed away my rights. Preston paled with each reveal. Chloe, seated in the back row, watched with her arms folded tightly across her chest. No longer his trophy. Now, his detonator. Then came the twist Preston never expected. The judge requested live testimony from Chloe.
She stepped forward, heels clicking like a metronome counting down his downfall.
"He told me his wife was dying," she said clearly. "He told me she wanted him to move on." Gasps echoed through the room. Preston buried his face in his hands. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. This wasn't revenge. This was truth finally catching the man who'd been running from it for years. The courtroom felt different the moment Chloe stepped down from the witness stand, as if her testimony had shifted the entire gravitational pull of the room. Preston avoided looking at her, at me, at anyone. His shoulders were curled inward, his once perfect posture eroded into something small, cornered and trembling beneath the weight of truth. My lawyer stood, poised and calm. "Your Honor, Exhibit 47. The screen illuminated with the next piece of evidence. Preston's internal emails.
Lines of text appeared, cold, calculated, devastating.
"Maddie is emotionally unstable. She'll be easy to push out. Chloe believes anything I tell her." A gasp rippled across the courtroom. Preston's attorney pinched the bridge of his nose, defeated. But my eyes stayed on Preston, watching the moment the polished mask finally cracked. His voice, usually smooth and confident, now rasped through clenched teeth. "This is taken out of context." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Hale, your context appears to be fraud, manipulation, and financial abuse." Another blow, a public one, and Preston felt every word. My lawyer continued, "Your Honor, we request full marital restitution, ownership of the watermill property, and financial penalties for concealment of assets." Preston surged to his feet. "That villa is mine. She doesn't even—" "Sit down, Mr. Hale," the judge snapped.
He sank back into his seat, breathing hard, cheeks flushed with humiliation. Then came the final strike. Rowan stepped forward, not as my ally, but as an expert witness in architectural asset valuation. He spoke clearly, professionally. The villa design was inspired directly from Mrs. Hart's original portfolio. Mr. Hale misrepresented its purchase and misappropriated marital funds to build a life with another partner. He didn't look at me when he said it, but he didn't have to. His presence was an anchor, quiet, steady, unshakable. The judge reviewed the evidence one last time before delivering the words that would end Preston's empire. "Given the severity of the misconduct, the court grants Mrs. Hart majority ownership of the watermill property, restitution for concealed funds, and full legal protection. Mr. Hale, your actions constitute deliberate financial deception."
Silence. Then a soft, stunned exhale slipped from Preston's lips. The sound of a man realizing he has lost everything. His career, his reputation, his carefully curated life. And worst of all for him, he had no one left to blame. The day the court officially transferred the villa into my name, the sky over the Hamptons was washed in soft gold, the kind of light that makes everything look forgiven, even if it isn't. Rowan insisted on driving me there, saying it was safer not to go alone. I didn't argue. Some places hold too many ghosts to face without someone steady beside you. When we pulled into the driveway, I felt the air shift. The last time I stood here, I felt gutted, humiliated, erased. Now, the only thing I felt was closure. The guard recognized me instantly, not as Preston's wife, but as the owner. "Mrs. Hart," he said with a respectful nod. "Welcome back." Welcome back. 2 words capable of stitching pieces of me together. Inside, the villa was silent, except for the echo of our footsteps across the polished floors. I half expected memories to ambush me. Flashbacks of Chloe's laughter, Preston's arms around her, the proposal I wasn't meant to see. But they didn't. The house didn't feel tainted anymore. It felt reclaimed. In the living room, Rowan paused, looking out through the glass wall toward the ocean. "You know," he said softly, "this place suits you more than it ever suited him." I let my hand brush the marble counter Preston bragged about, the one he never let me choose. "He stole my dream," I murmured, "but he couldn't keep it." Rowan stepped closer, not touching me, not crowding me, just present. He never understood that dreams don't come from houses or money. They come from the people strong enough to rebuild after they're destroyed. I swallowed, emotion rising unexpectedly. We toured the rooms together, my future studio overlooking the water, the guest suite glowing with sunlight, the balcony where Preston had once betrayed me. I stepped onto it alone, breathing in the salt air. This time the memory didn't break me. It empowered me. Behind me, Rowan's voice was gentle. "What will you do with the place?" I turned back to him, a small smile forming. "Live in it, heal in it, and redesign every inch to erase him." He smiled back, soft, almost proud. When we left the villa that evening, locking the doors behind me, I realized something profound. I hadn't just won a house. I'd won myself back. And that was a victory Preston could never touch. Healing is strange. It doesn't arrive all at once, wrapped neatly in triumph. It comes quietly, one steady breath, one soft sunrise, one moment where the past no longer controls the present. That moment came for me 3 weeks after the villa became mine again. I'd spent the afternoon repainting the terrace railing, the same one Preston once promised to redo for Chloe. Now it gleamed in the warm glow of sunset, white, clean, untouched by their shadows. As I stepped back to admire it, I heard footsteps behind me. Rowan. He carried 2 coffees and a gentle smile. "Thought you might need a break." "I do," I admitted, taking the cup. "I never realized how peaceful this place could be." "That's because it's finally yours," he said softly. We sat together on the terrace steps, watching the waves roll in slow, steady rhythms. There was no urgency between us, no pressure, just the quiet understanding of 2 people who had walked through storms and survived them. "I'm proud of you," he said, "for fighting back, for rebuilding, for not letting him define the rest of your life." I felt tears sting my eyes, not from sadness, but from recognition. No one had ever spoken to me that way, not even Preston, back when things were good. "Rowan," I whispered, "I didn't do this alone." He looked at me for a long moment, something tender passing through his expression. Then he stood, slipped a hand into his pocket, and pulled out a small velvet box. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, just simple, meaningful. My breath caught. Rowan. He shook his head gently. Not pressure, not expectation, just a question. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, gold, understated, real. Maddie, I don't want to replace your past. I want to build a future with you, one made of honesty, not illusions. But only if you're ready. The wind softened, the ocean hushed.
And for the first time since my world shattered, my heart felt whole again. I nodded, a tear slipping free. Yes, I'm ready. He slipped the ring onto my finger, not as a rescue, not as a prize, but as a promise. A new life, a new love, a new chapter written entirely by me. Preston once stole my dreams, but in the end, life handed me something far greater. A future built on truth, strength, and a man who saw my worth from the start. So that's how our story comes to an end. And if you're still here with us right now, my friend, it means something in Maddie's journey touched your heart in a way maybe words can't explain. And that matters. Because her story isn't just about betrayal or revenge. It's about rediscovering your worth after someone tries to convince you you have none. The Stoics used to say, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Real strength begins there. And that's exactly what Maddie learned. We can't control who hurts us, but we can choose who we become after the hurt. Pain doesn't get the final word unless you hand it the pen. Maybe you're going through your own storm now. Maybe someone broke your trust, your dreams, or a version of the life you thought you were building. But like Marcus Aurelius wrote, what stands in the way becomes the way. Sometimes the obstacle is actually the doorway to the life you were meant to live. If this story gave you even a little strength, a little clarity, or a little hope, do me a favor. Like, share, and subscribe so our little community can keep growing. We're here for you, and your story isn't over yet. Before we close, I want to make something clear for anyone watching, and for YouTube's system as well. The story you've just heard is a work of fiction, created purely for entertainment and emotional reflection. It isn't based on real individuals or real events, and any resemblance is completely coincidental. Our goal isn't to accuse, expose, or harm anyone, but to explore themes many people relate to: healing after betrayal, finding inner strength, and rebuilding a life with dignity. These stories are written to inspire, to comfort, and to create a safe space where viewers can see themselves grow through the characters' journeys. Thank you for understanding, and thank you for being here with us. Your support means everything, and it allows us to keep creating meaningful content for you.